Everybody wants to be fluent in 3 months. Everybody wants to have a specific time frame to understand how much effort they have to put into language learning in order to achieve whatever goal they have. But the thing is that trying to be fluent in 3 months might be the exact reason why you can't learn a language. So in this video, let's talk about why we want to be fluent in 3 months so badly, why it's stopping you from learning a language, and what to do instead. So why fluent in 3 months? That's kind of random. Honestly, it's marketing. That's it. It's a really easy, fun slogan that people can say in order to get you motivated to learn a language, preferably using whatever their course or product or book or whatever it is that they're selling. It feels really good and it gets you to buy their product. And that's all they really care about. They don't care so much about whether or not it's effective for you. They care about how much money they make. Because to be honest, language learning is really stressful and foreign and unknown. It's a completely new skill for most of us who are watching YouTube videos like this. And we are looking for some direction as to what to do, how long to do it, when you should expect to see progress, any number of things. We're looking for some data to support that we want to learn a language and this is the right way to do it. So when you get messages like be fluent in 3 months, this triggers a lot of urgency and hope and excitement and motivation and things that are really great in the moment and that make you make impulsive choices, really, and buy these products. But here's the problem. How well or poorly a specific app or course is marketed has nothing to do with whether or not it's actually going to successfully teach you a language. Because remember, this is important, just like I said. They care about getting you to pay money. They're a lot less interested in how it actually affects your language learning. They don't care because it's not their job to successfully teach majority of students to learn whatever language it is. Their job is to make money. And so their end of the deal ended as soon as they got you to fork over your money. Your brain and language learning, on the other hand, are a completely different animal. So when you're constantly chasing the next great app, the next popular course, of course you're getting nowhere because you're chasing the wrong target. Because what happens when we're constantly buying apps and finding courses that promise that this is going to be the way that you learn languages and you feel really excited and feel really great, but you know it's not going to last. And I say this as somebody who spent years doing this, so trust me, I get it. Whenever it doesn't work, which is pretty quickly actually, it feels like a failure. Because the marketing of be fluent in 3 months and all the testimonials that you see and maybe even some friend that recommended that app or a teacher that told you to use this course. These are all proof that not only does that app or course work, but it's you that has the problem. So whenever you start up on a new track to learn a language, you always feel like you're behind, you always feel like you're missing something. But in reality, you are exactly where you need to be. So let's say you bought a course that promised that you would be fluent in 3 months and 2 months later, 1 month later, you're not feeling any closer to that. Like something's missing. You know that there's just something that is not connecting the way that you expected it to connect. So what happens then? Well, it's really stressful. Because again, you were given these expectations and you held on to them, you believed them, you trusted them. So the only thing that's left to do now is panic and feel anxious and feel stressed out. And you know, you've committed so much time and effort and money into doing this and you still can't make that connection. And then of course you figure, okay, so this app didn't work for me. This course didn't work for me. So I just have to find the one that will work for me. So you try another course and you go through the cycle again. And you go through this other course and you go through the cycle again. And you get this book and you go through the cycle again. And every single thing you try, no matter how many glowing reviews, no matter how much you trust the polyglot that sold it to you, you still end up in the same exact place. And that place is completely burnt out and stressed out, don't know what you're looking for, don't know what's wrong with you. You just want to learn the language and you were willing to do the work to do that, but for some reason, nothing seems to work. And I know that at this point, this is when you feel like there's something inherently wrong with you. Either you're too lazy to truly commit to a language app, you don't have enough motivation, you're procrastinating too much. Maybe you feel like you're too dumb or too old to learn a language. No matter what you're feeling about your ability or lack thereof to learn a language, I can promise you that that is not the problem. You are not the problem. I know that it feels like every app, every course out there isn't working for you, and so therefore it must be that you're the problem. And I'm sure you feel lazy, procrastinating, depressed in other aspects of your life, so it just makes sense that those features of your life are running over to your language learning. But one big thing that I've learned about myself and my clients is that when you have those feelings of procrastination, lack of motivation, you can't stay consistent in your language learning, it's not a personal failure, it's because you aren't using the right strategy to learn a language. So this is when I want us to get off the Fluent in 3 months hamster wheel and refocus on something that'll actually work for your language learning. Because you can make progress, you can get closer to your language learning goals, you just have to look for it differently. What does that mean? So the idea behind strategies like Fluent in 3 months, or you have to commit to 30 minutes a day or else there's no point, is that your knowledge of the language will just consistently grow every single day. But when that doesn't happen and you look back at all of the hours and all the days that you spent learning your language, but you don't remember anything that you studied and you're not any closer to being able to have conversations, this is when you need to realize that learning a language is not necessarily about daily results. Think about it like going to the gym. It's not like you go to the gym on day one and you start working your biceps and you can see your biceps grow a little bit, and then you see them growing incrementally every single day that you work your biceps. That's not how it works at all. Actually, what really happens is you go to the gym on day one, you work your biceps, and then you are sore and you are exhausted and you can't move your arms for a week. And then a week later, you go back to the gym again. And maybe it still hurts. Maybe you can't work out as much as you did day one. Maybe you're a little bit stronger. You're not gonna notice a huge difference in your bicep strength between that first day and whenever that second day is. But it's when you keep going and you keep up with the consistency and you go to the gym and you work up that bicep as often as you can without hurting yourself and damaging your muscle, that's when you start seeing real progress. You don't go to the gym day one and then when you're too exhausted to go to the gym on day two and you work your biceps because your arms hurt, that's not a failure. That's a good thing. It means that day one was a shock to the system and you are learning to change your body. It's the same thing with language learning. So every time you start a new language app, you can do it for a day and then you get busy or you can't do it the next day or whatever it is, and then you feel like a failure because you've only been doing it for 1 day. You can stop feeling like a failure. That's not what's happening. What's happening is you are training your brain to do something different, and that give yourself some time to adjust. Give your brain some time to digest this new information you're giving it. It's gonna take a minute and there's no set timeline. So, okay, we know that counting the days, counting the months as the way to measure how close you are to your progress, how close you are to your goals. We know that that doesn't help. So what do we look at instead? Now, this is something that I can go into really specifically with my clients, but generally speaking, there are a couple different ways that you can see that you're making progress, even if it doesn't really feel like it. Just keep in mind for these signs that it's not going to be nearly as dramatic as you think it's going to be. It's going to be really, really slow, painfully slow. You'll get used to it. So you can look at progress like the complexity of the sentences you can say or the complexity of the conversations that you can have. So while on day one, you might only be able to say, "Hi, my name is," by month one, you might be able to talk about your interests, your job, how many pets you have, things like that. It's these little changes that feel really small and insignificant, but they are insanely significant. You have to have those little tiny insignificance, because those little tiny insignificant differences build up to giant significant moments. Another thing you can keep an eye out for is just general confidence, because learning a new language is really scary and really difficult. So the first few times you'll do it, you're gonna be really scared and really nervous, really anxious, really stressed out, but the more you go back to it, the easier it gets. And so when it starts becoming a little bit easier, a little bit less of an obstacle, you'll be able to recognize, hey, this is getting easier for me. That means that I'm progressing and I'm building these skills. It's a little less difficult today than it was last week. That is a good sign. Remember, it's not gonna feel like a big deal in the moment, but it's really important to acknowledge those differences. They build up. So this concept is like a big giant mindset shift. The focus being that I don't want you to be thinking about the giant changes, because the giant changes don't come all at once. Giant changes are built up from 10,000 little changes. You just have to acknowledge and validate the little changes, because if you don't validate those tiny changes, then you can't build the big change. So let's get started with this shift. The first shift is to stop chasing how much time you're spending. Stop worrying about how you're gonna be fluent in 3 months. Stop staring at the calendar and expecting it to happen at a certain day on a certain time after a certain number of hours. We simply cannot time these things or measure these things in that way. I know that we tend to look at time frames as, like I said, a metric of comfort to feel comfortable that we're not wasting our time. We can do better than that. Instead, start focusing on how you're learning. And by that I mean paying attention to how you feel about the resources and strategies that you're using. So like, for example, if you started with a new app, how does that app make you feel? Do you actually enjoy using it, or does it feel like a chore? Is it actually leading you to practice the language in the way that you want to practice it? Or is it just kind of pressing buttons? Basically, is it working for you as a person, as a language learner, or do you need to take the information and move on to something else? And don't do this impulsively. The difference here is that we're going based on data, not out of anxiety. Think about whether or not the resource that you're using is actually functional for you, not whether or not you're fluent yet and if you can tell that it's working yet. The next shift to think about is that language learning is not about hitting a deadline. In reality, language learning doesn't ever really end. It's not about reaching an end goal. It's about building a system that suits your life. Because in reality, language learning is a hobby. Like, yes, we can have goals, we should have goals, and we should have, a direction that we're going, but it's not as simple as checking off a box. It's not as simple as a to-do list. Language learning is a hobby that you incorporate into the rest of your life. It's something that you enjoy doing, that you want to do day to day, and brings you happiness. Because we live in a time where there are so many different ways to learn a language that there's no reason why you can't enjoy your strategy. You just have to find the one that fits you. Speaking of strategies, the next mind shift I want you to think about is that apps can help, courses can help, books can help. However, only if they're part of a personalized strategy that works for you. This is why I'm not going to recommend specific resources for anybody who's not my client, because I know from personal experience that unless I know very specific things about you and your language learning, there's no way for me to give you accurate advice. A strategy is about pulling together all the different facets of learning a language. The resources that you're using, what you're expecting from those resources, how much time you have, what your interests are, what other obstacles that you have in your life and in your language learning. It's a whole complex, multifaceted thing, and when you treat it as something as tiny and simple and insignificant as just an app, you're always going to be spinning in the same circle and always going to be frustrated. Because, and this is the last shift I want to leave you with in this video, the goal isn't to get fluent in 3 months. I know that is a really catchy slogan and it feels really good to say. Trying to get fluent in 3 months keeps language learners stuck because it's an unrealistic standard to meet. If language learning is something that you want to do and you want to enjoy and you want to add to your life, it's not about trying to get it done as quickly as possible. It's about finding a strategy that fits you and makes you happy and makes you want to keep learning languages. It's the difference between trying to fit it into 3 months of your life and cramming and stressing about it, and looking at yourself 3 years from now and saying, oh, you're still learning the language and you've met certain goals and you have new goals for yourself and you have these friends and you have these interests and your target language exists and has developed into an entirely different aspect of your life. So all that being said, if you've been feeling like a failure or like you're not motivated enough, you're procrastinating too much, or just dumb because trying to be fluent in 3 months just has not worked for you, it's not proof of any of those horrible things that you're thinking of yourself. It's proof that you're a human being who has more complex needs than just a random dot on your calendar. Stop trying to use metrics that won't actually benefit your language learning and start learning to track the right kind of progress for you. Because once you start to learn to see the progress that you're actually already making in your language learning, everything will get a lot easier. So if you want help creating this language learning strategy for yourself that fits you and not some random timeline that you found on the internet, click link below to book a call with me, because this is exactly what I help my clients build every single day. Otherwise, if you enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell to be notified when I post a new one all about how to learn languages every week. Bye.